My guest today is filmmaker Alex Kaplan, and in his early 20s, Alex started a promising acting career in Manhattan while bartending at night to get by. But the unexpected death of his father sent him into a tailspin, and he began to numb himself with substances to ease the pain. But this turned into a full-blown addiction that lasted almost 4 years. Now, on his journey, Alex saw that his issue was far less about using those substances than it was about why he used them. He believes that no matter what we struggle with, when we all feel more seen, heard, and loved, the world will be a better place, and he's doing this through movies. Now, over the past 5 years, Alex has climbed his way out of addiction and into a very successful career as a writer, director, and producer, and is now the executive producer of a well-regarded commercial production company on the East Coast. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome filmmaker Alex Kaplan and his brand new short film, Safe, to the show. Welcome, Alex.
Hi. Hey, Ward. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. And I will tell you this, I have been looking forward to this interview with you because I did some research and I have been in absolute awe. So what inspired you to get into filmmaking?
Filmmaking. Wow. I wanted to be an actor since I was 8 years old, right? Because I wanted to do all the things that they got to do. I wanted to be the action star. I wanted to be the boyfriend and the romantic lover and like all of the things. And I was just like, an actor gets to do all of these things. But then I studied acting and I got into acting. But it was on set that I realized I really didn't want to be in the passenger seat and I really wanted to drive that car. So I started to get into production and I started to apply all the things I learned in my conservatory acting program because we studied script analysis, we studied directing, we studied everything. And coming from an acting background gave me a leg up to work with people commercially, work with people who are actors, non-actors, about how to communicate physically, facially, and through tone. So that just all started going. And the biggest thing, I wanted to get into movies and be an actor when I was that young because I realized that movies were that impactful in my life and in my upbringing. Movies taught me how to be empathetic and compassionate, to consider other people's perspectives. It taught me emotional intelligence. And so movies raised me, as I think they do a lot of people. And I wanted to be part of that.
So what was the film that really kicked your inspiration into gear?
Oh man, I don't know. Um, as a kid, when I was a kid, I loved action movies. Lethal Weapon was one of my favorite movies that just made me want to be a part of movie making. But the movie, if I have to like really pick out a film that just, encapsulates what I think the power and purpose and simplicity of film is, is Little Miss Sunshine. I am a huge fan of Little Miss Sunshine. And I think it does so many things. It talks about real struggles with real people while also being wildly funny and entertaining. And it's about a team of people who love each other, who have trouble connecting with one another, coming together and trying whether or not they succeed. And I think that encapsulates life.
Yeah, it does. I had a wonderful conversation a few years back with Alan Arkin. So he won the Oscar for that
Yeah.
role.
I
You
read
know,
that you had that conversation, and I was so jealous because he has always been one of my all-time favorite actors.
yeah, absolutely incredible. And yeah, it's funny when I see actors and then they end up being directors. And because I think I have talked to actors who are, in every true sense of the word, they are an actor. But then there are those that the vision changes and they want to be behind the camera and, like you said, driving the car. Because then there's a whole different vision of putting it all together. And a lot of people love basically taking something from nothing, creating it from paper to a storyboard, and then putting it on film. But being in the midst of that, well, I guess we would call it controlled chaos. I guess it is when you make a film, and it's just amazing to hear everybody's stories. But for you though, you ended up with a very severe addiction problem. And I'm interested, what did you learn about your addictions that led you to seek the why you use them than just being addicted to them?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I got really lucky. I had lost myself in substances and depression, and I did seek help for myself, and I went to some traditional groups and through some traditional methods, and they really didn't strike me. They focused on the addiction and the substance, and the habits rather than what felt like it was driving underneath, which was shame. And so I was about to give up trying to get sober. And I luckily stumbled upon a very progressive group run by a doctor who, in my first conversation with him, he mentioned that he said three things that really stuck. And the first thing was, Alex, life is a patchwork quilt. And right now, the only patch you have is addiction. Our job isn't to get rid of that patch. It's always going to be part of your quilt. Our job in this room is to help add patches of hobbies and habits of family and friends and career and all these other things to build a, a quilt that is a life worth living. And that patch of addiction will never go away, but it'll get relatively smaller and always be a part of that life. And I was like, you got me, man. I'm in. And so the second thing he said was, okay, so the first thing we do in this room is right now you look in the mirror and you see a screw up, a junkie, a cokehead, a drunk, somebody with no potential and no value and no hope. We need to take those goggles off, society's goggles, and look through your own empathetic and compassionate eyes and see somebody with infinite potential and infinite hope. And I was like, dude, I'm in. Like you're speaking my language. That touches me as a human being. And we haven't talked about substances. We're talking about the human condition. And it just, as a storyteller, as an actor, as a filmmaker, that's what I'm attuned to. And so it just like that really connected with me. And the last thing he said was cool. So in this room, what we do is we rarely talk about addiction. We don't talk about substances or booze or heroin or whatever. In this room, we talk about life, about stressors, about work, about family. And the biggest lesson in this room is that it's not about learning how not to fall, but about how to pick yourself up better and better each time, which is the lesson of life. Whether you struggle with alcohol or you struggle with work or you struggle with family dynamics, like whatever we're doing, life is universally about that journey of overcoming adversity, of falling down and picking yourself back up. That's what we do on a daily basis. And so it's about changing your relationship with struggle, changing your relationship with failure, and changing your relationship to your expectations and your self-talk about how when I fall down, I am not a failure. I'm actually doing really well. So that's what led to where I am now in the work that I do.
I love that because it's like creating new patches on the quilt, as you said, because uh, we all know that many quilts that are hand sewn tell stories,
Beautiful.
and you're telling multiple stories from the quilt you've been making. And so, how did you turn these past addictions into a very successful career in film?
Um, well, I long story short, I met a guy, and he was an actor I hired for a AAA commercial, and we just really connected, and we both wanted to make our own things. And we took about a year and a half to make our first short film. That's about 8 minutes long. And we were just like, well, we never need to do that again. And in the making of the short film, we found out we were both struggling with addiction. And so naturally, what did we do? We went out drinking together. So it was at this bar that Brian was just like, we're talking about the like very human humor and irony of the situation openly. And he was like, this would be a great short film. I was like, you're right, it would be. He's like, we should make it. I'm like, you're out of your goddamn mind. I am never making another short film as long as I live. They cost money, they take favors, they take time, blood, sweat, and tears. And it's just, and for what? They really don't have much value, if any, on in any market. I think they're the best product with no market, no ROI. I'm like, I'm not doing it. Over the next 6 weeks, we're both just like, that'd be another good one, that'd be another good one, that'd be another good one. And finally, like Brian's just like, hear me out. What if there was a YouTube channel with a growing collection of high quality short films about addiction? I was like, So we came up with rules where each film had to be as high in quality, entertaining and immersive as it is challenging, insightful, and authentic on some perspective of addiction. Once we saw that, we had this idea. We saw the field for what this could be. This becomes not just a collection of films, but a safe place where I can go when I feel like I'm struggling or I'm alone and I'm at work and everybody's going out for drinks and I don't feel like calling a sponsor or going to a meeting. I can go to the Of Substance channel, and I can watch a 5 to 10 minute rom com that curses, that might have a monster in it, that's an adult movie that's not patronizing me in tone as we're used to with addiction films. And instead, it just makes me laugh. It pulls me in. It makes me feel seen and it empowers me. So after that 5 minutes, I'm just like, that was great. I'm good. Let's go back to work. And so that was the beginning of it. And we realized we saw the forest for the trees. And we went to film professionals. I was an executive producer in the Philadelphia area, and I knew a lot of people. And we went to cinematographers and actors, and we're like, "Hey, we don't have any money, but here's the vision of what we want to do. Here's the impact." And they were like, "I don't want any money. My mom struggles. I struggle. My brother struggles. How can I help?" And so we needed to design this in a way where we could appreciate and show appreciation for people giving up their time. And so we designed films. We made our first 8 films in 8 months as a proof of concept. Films that are on the site live. Shoe and First Date were the first ones we shot. We shot them in one day. 6 of our first 8 films we shot 2 a day because we were just stuck in a box. We're just like, we got no money. We've got my apartment. We've got your place. We've got the cinematographer's house. We've got this office that I work out of. What can we do? Here are the actors we know. And we have this amount of time. And being stuck in a box forced that great creativity to just be like, here's the few shots we need to tell a really simple story creatively in a way that hits. And honestly, I never knew this was what we were going to do. I never knew I was going to be the guy who specialized. I'm that one guy who actually specializes in narrative shorts because we found a purpose for them and we found a value in them. And
See,
that's how I got here.
I love short films.
I know, me too.
Yeah, and in the last year I have seen some absolutely incredible short films. I think the bar in the last year has been raised extremely high.
Yeah.
But what I love about your short films that I have took time to watch, you've created a series of these very short films that go beyond entertainment, but you're using them to help bring healing and growth in those dealing with addiction, insecurity, guilt, shame, even those that are feeling, let's say, outside the box. A very, if not one of the most powerful uses of films that I've ever seen. What did you see in film that other filmmakers weren't addressing to create these shorts?
You know what? I don't know that it's something that I see that other people don't in film. I think the struggle is that we're all trying to compete in a vertical where we're told there's a lack of resources. We have to pander to make our one film that's really difficult. And I think that working in commercials and corporate production and branded content, I saw that corporations would come to me and say, hey, we want a 10-minute rom-com to help us with DEI training or with like, whatever it would be. And I'd be like, I know what you want. Sure. It's going to cost you this much to make a high quality narrative piece. And I can't guarantee it's not going to have that message that's banging you over the head, because that will undermine the quality of the immersive, the emotional immersiveness of the film being so abstract in nature. And they're just like, well, we've got this much money and it has to say this, so do your best. So I'm like, so that's how I think we've got stuck in this catch-22 situation. This is no new idea. I think the system has just had us stuck for so long in making infomercials and training videos and educational films in such a way that is not that's keeping us under this glass ceiling. And so it was in making these 8 films in 8 months that we realized, by engaging film professionals in a sense of service and purpose for one day, then we can make this product, and we can make it for this, and then we can deliver it into revenue streams where we're making our films available as tools for mental health professionals to use in therapy and treatment and rehab in schools and prisons and beyond, as provocative tools to incite a heightened state of emotion for their patients that allows them to dive in deeper faster and expedite outcomes in healing and growth. We just kept oopsing on the next pebble to get here. We're no geniuses. We just kept. I think it's a combination of my own struggles, my own journey of treatment, and my connection to the power of human story, that was just a perfect nexus to come together to allow us and the people giving of their time and the oopsing on this. It was just, I don't know how we got here.
It's weird because, I've watched some of your films, and they're not what most people would expect. Like, I've seen films that covered drug use, alcohol, suicide, abuse, and there's always that same type of theme. And it seems like filmmakers just get caught up in it. And I always look at it like, so then I've done hundreds of interviews based on films where, and I see both sides. So, like, one of the things I absolutely cannot stand in filmmaking is when a filmmaker focuses on a stereotype. I cannot stand it. Even the filmmaker who the public may view as a stereotype then creates a stereotype on film, and I'm like, you're making your situation worse. So I want to see the opposite, And I think in the areas of not just substance abuse, but people that are trapped in shame and guilt, insecurities, there's a better way to tell the story in which sends them a message of hope without saying, you're a loser, you need to be in rehab. And some of them probably been in rehab 6 or 7 times. So the message is always the same. And like you said, until you find that one that turns the light bulb on and gives you a whole new perspective. In other words, taking it outside the box. And that's what your films are doing. So the first film I saw, and ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go to ofsubstance.org. So the first film I went to, I saw Trapped and just loved it. It is barely 5 minutes long. So I don't want to get into what it's about a bit, but tell us about it.
Sure. Trapped is about a young woman who is newly sober, out of treatment, and she meets her brother at a at a restaurant for lunch. It's the end of their lunch, and they're really clicking. They're both happy, and he has to leave, and she's there alone. She's feeling great because she's seen her brother and she's lifted up. And then she has to walk out, and she walks by that golden lit bar that's always so alluring, right? And she takes a moment and she tries to leave, but something's holding her back. And that's all I'm going to say. But it's a really magical piece. It's magical realism, right? Like we find really creative and interesting ways to uh, experience what our characters are experiencing as human beings in a way that's universally relatable. Whether or not you struggle with falling off the wagon, or drinking, or cocaine, or heroin, or drugs, or not, Trapped is a film that's about being stuck in cycles. So we use this film that's about a woman falling off the wagon. I use it with groups of entrepreneurs to talk about imposter syndrome, because it's not, movies are never about the circumstance they seem to be about. Movies are never about, they're not about Thor fighting Thanos, right? Movies are always about that universally relatable human emotional experience and journey of trying and failing, of connection, of disconnection, of loneliness, of community, of overcoming adversity. And that is, I think that's been our magic with what we do, is we focus on the human element all the time. And to your point, I loved what you said about just like, somebody can go through different treatment, whether you struggle with addiction or bipolar disorder or whatever you struggle with. And then it's finally that seventh time that like something, the right person says the right thing and it clicks. That's exactly what we're trying to do with these movies. We're trying to expedite the process of eureka for millions at a time. We're trying to enhance and explode and accelerate that aha moment, using movies for people who are looking for that aha moment all the time.
Well, here's the thing about the film Trapped. There is that aha moment for the viewer that may be dealing with addiction, or they're in the process of working to get out of that addiction. The only thing I want to say about this film, and ladies and gentlemen, it makes you think, but there is such incredible creativity here from a filmmaker point of view. One of the greatest things I saw in this film was the framing.
Thank you.
Not just where she's sitting there with her brother. It was that I've watched this film more than once. When she walked out of so when she's leaving and she's walking by the bar, when she walked out of the frame, her mind was on leaving the restaurant. She's focused on the door, but then that slight thought entered her mind. The little devil on her shoulder showed up in a split second with enough pull to pull her back in. And think about it, and you know this better than I do. With addiction, the pull doesn't have to be very strong, does it?
Right, but it's the same thing with food. I don't care what you struggle with. If you're eating like two candy bars a day because you're just like overwhelmed and you're just like, I don't know what to do, but you're wanting to like stop that. No matter what your habits are that keep pulling you in, it doesn't take a lot to let that habit that you've created keep pulling you back. The thing about Trapped that a lot of people say is that it's a very visceral experience, right? Like as soon as she's going through what she goes through, you shudder a little bit as things happen, and that's the power of creative cinema, right? That's just like you're immersed and you feel with them and you're a little shocked, but at the same time, because it's so creative and because it's so entertaining, it doesn't leave you just depressed. Like we didn't just like hammer you over the head with
It's
your
not
script.
depressing at all.
No.
At all, not one bit. And that's the beauty of the film.
Well, so here's the other thing about it. Here's a story of Trapped, and I love to share this after I show it. Whenever I show it in a group, when we were first getting started, we had written like 5 quick scripts, and Trapped was a 2-page script. It was just an idea I had, and it was just a 2-page script. And I was with my mom, the woman I lived with for 5 years, while trying and failing to get and stay sober. And I was just like, Mom, check this out. And I give her my phone. She reads the script, and afterwards she puts it down, and she looks at me and she says, "Is this really what it's like for you?" I said, "Yeah, Mom, this is what it's like for me." And she dropped the phone, and she grabbed me and she held me and she hugged me for 25 minutes as we cried together, because that was the moment when we moved the conversation beyond "why can't you stop drinking?" and to "I see you, I love you, I'm with you." That was the moment when she stopped looking at our differences and was able to connect with the emotional experience of how I feel when I'm trapped in my addiction. And so that is the power of this.
I think I have a title for your next film.
Cool.
Why can't you? Think about those 3 words. Everybody's guilty. Everybody's guilty. Because we're not looking at the person, we're looking at the problem. And your mother did the right thing. You love, you listen, you work to understand, because then you wipe away those 3 words.
I wrote your name next to this. I'll be calling you. I'm
Why
serious.
can't you? I
Why
mean,
not?
think about it. You know how much damage those 3 words can do?
Absolutely. Well, like, but Ward, this is how we keep making films. Is somebody has an idea that might be 3 words, and it's just like, yeah, that idea resonates with me. What do we do? What's this look like? We just want to talk about this idea. What's a creative way to do this? What actors do we have? Who do we have on deck? Where can we go? We only have a day to shoot. Somebody wanted to do a thing. We do it on the beach. Oh, we have access to a beach. Why can't you? And then we just keep going. And that's how we make these. We come up with them really quickly. And I think that's also the magic of what we're doing is because we don't have this one film that means the world, we're liberated to just be like, we got nothing to lose. Just like these films only need to be so good to do the work and have the impact that we're developing them to have in treatment, in rehab, in hospitals. And so they only need to be that good. And then once in a while, we'll be like, hey, this one, we have one that we really want to produce and we want to make. So 1 out of 10, we produce a real big film. But for the most part, Trapped, that's not what we were making it for. And the thing is, I think in being so loose and easy about it, something magical can happen. And these films that we're not putting a ton of like stress into can really pop and be something special.
Yeah, when I saw Trapped, my thought was is after it was over, the person that is dealing with an addiction would see this film and go, I don't want to be trapped anymore. I'm not going to be trapped anymore. It's almost like the film plants the seed. So when they go out into the public realm, it's like, oh, it's almost like a little piece of strength that they can lean on, because it's a reminder now. It's embedded into their mind that I can walk past that bar, walk out that front door, and just keep on going about my day, and not fall back into that. That's the great thing about these films. They're the most perfect positive reminders. And then you created this brand new one, which it's so it's so funny because it's only 60 seconds long. So your film called Safe. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Now, for the audience, but I mean, tell you the truth, Alex, when I watched this film, I was like, this is like the most perfect PSA I've ever seen. You know, it's kind of like we see all these commercials where it says he gets us. This is Safe is the film where it's like, I got you. Come back. I got you. Why only 60 seconds?
So thank you, by the way. we got word 4 weeks before Slam Dance's deadline was coming that they had a new 60-second um, category. Just this year, they have a new 60-second category. So my buddy Michael reached out. We had met a few weeks before at another film festival, and he's a big commercial director. And I told him what I do. He's like, "That's cool. I want to make things in a day. I want to just make things that are fun." And so he called me like a few days later. He's just like, "I just got word that they're doing this. Why don't we make something?" And so we actually designed two films. We shot two films that day. We focused on Michael built a really, really brilliant film that's just like we built it to be 60 seconds, but and he brought a crazy crew of really talented, really impressive people together to make this because he's who he is. And we were making chips or crackers, and it's just like it's so good that cutting it down to 60 seconds almost doesn't do it justice. So it's going to have its own life on the circuit and everything else. But I was just like, hey, look, we're bringing together a crew for a day. We got to make a second one. And so we spent 8 hours on the first one, and I was just like, if we're gonna shoot something in an hour at the end of the day, it has to be tight. And so Michael introduced me to Caleb, our lead actor, and my co-creator and my co-writer on it, who was the AC on Chips or Crackers earlier that day. And I was just like, hey guys, we need to hit something that's really heartfelt, very open, very real, very um, well. So Caleb and I, when we first talked, I told him about Of Substance and what we do, and he's like, "You ever do anything about ADHD?" I'm like, "I have ADHD." He's like, "I have ADHD." He's like, "My brain is just firing all the time, and it's exhausting. I can't follow it." I'm like, "Me too. I just like I'm lost all the time, and it's chaos inside my mind." And it's just like, and that just leads to more weight of just the world, and just like I feel like I'm letting everybody down. I'm doing all this and I'm disappointing people and I can't handle it all. And that was just us talking. And I'm like, all right, well, this was nice. Now I know you, you know me. Let's come up with something to make. And it was in our first creative meeting, like a few days later, just like, what if we just talk about what we talked about the other day about ADHD and like and the weight of it? And then like Michael was just like, okay, well, I was like, if we're gonna shoot this in an hour, it's gotta be just like one camera close up on a face that doesn't move and maybe an inner monologue and then a slight reveal at the end. That's all we have time to film. And so like Michael was just like had a really great idea about like a guy in a dinosaur costume shooting in a park and panning and panning. And it's just like, Michael, that's a great idea. We can't do that in an hour. And he's like, I have my big speakers. I'm like, Mike, we can't do that in an hour, but like, we should make that, but we can't do that that day. And he's like, yeah, I don't have a dinosaur costume anyway. I'm like, okay. But then he says, but I do have a teddy bear costume. And I'm like, oh. And so like, I just have this click and connection. And without ruining the ending, I recommend everybody see it. Um, uh, I was just like, okay, there's this, there's this intersection between the weight of being an adult in today's world, of just the stress of just the anvil on our back, of the comparison, scrolling through social media, watching the news all the time, and just feeling like the world is just crushing you, and no matter what you do, you can't get out of it. And that against this idea of a teddy bear, there's just something there. And so out of that came Trapped, or I'm sorry, out of that came Safe. And we built something where we could shoot it in a day, or like in an hour. We shot it in an
Yeah,
hour.
I loved it because it showed me it's okay not to be okay.
Hey man, that's it. That's everything. That's everything. And you're not alone in
That's
feeling like
right.
not okay.
Yeah, and you know I'm not going to break that film down because nobody's seen it yet. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's probably a very powerful 60 seconds. But it has an incredible emotional impact, but it's not a downer. And that's the thing about so many of these short films that I see. I mean, I'll read the log line and I'm like, oh, meaning I'm going to have to sit here, watch it, analyze it, break it down, and whatever the next film I'm going to have to watch right after that better be funny or uplifting or something to counteract what the downside is going to be on watching some of these films. I mean, sometimes you probably know this too. Sometimes I wonder if a lot of filmmakers have some very deep seated issues because some of these short films are traumatic and dramatic, and you're like, can y'all do something like happy? Because y'all
Yeah.
got issues.
Well, like also let's find the levity in the heaviness of the things that we want to talk about. I think that's what we owe to our audiences. That's what we owe to each other. It's just like it's if we're just going to talk about how hard things are, it's masturbatory, right? Like I mean, it's not doing anything. It's like self-flagellation in a way, right? But if we really put in the effort to be like, hey, how do I take this hard thing and twist it in a way that shines a light? That maybe like,
Okay, see, your films are based on bringing forth and initiating healing. In the general short film realm, I swear these filmmakers are like, how can I show the world how deep and dark and emotional I can bring a film? And because I know that a lot of people play that realm for the award circuit when it comes to the film festivals, I get it. But
yeah,
after a while, you know, how about giving everybody an escape route?
yeah, and it's funny. Like I just went to Slam Dance, and I've been going to a lot of festivals lately. Our last film, if you get a chance to watch it, Hide Your Crazy, is a horror romantic comedy that's on our website. It's 13 minutes long. It's a monster movie about a young woman who physically transforms into a monster every few months, and her boyfriend catches her in the act unknowingly for the first time, and horror and humor ensue. But really, it's about that ugly thing we think we all have inside of us that we're afraid to share, thinking that it'll keep us from being loved and accepted. And so that's great film. It's won like 6 awards internationally, and it's as a movie at film festivals, and it's in our system to go into therapy. But I've been going to festivals with that for the past 2 to 3 years, and I'm seeing tremendous films, like really great shorts, like what you and I want to see. But at the same time, I think we're mostly what I see is that we're mostly stuck in thinking I have to live in a genre or I have to live in this world where it's either this or it's a buddy buddy comedy, right? And it's just like it has to be a certain level of easy to keep that lightness of funny, or it has to be down here to keep that brevity and weight. And I think there's a middle ground where we can find creative ways to just incite deeper thought with a little bit of hope and consideration.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, Kay Callan, who is a well-known actress. She's been in The New Adventures of Superman. She was in Knives Out with Daniel Craig, and she said the same thing I did. She goes, "What is wrong with all of these filmmakers just wanting to go deep and dark all the time?" She goes, "It's exhausting." And people dealing with addictions, they don't need to be exhausted. They need to be taken by the hand and, like you said, to be seen, heard, loved, lifted up, and start sewing in a positive patch on that quilt.
Well, I think that there's just never been any direction, right? Like we there's no place to put short films. You just like all they are is a calling card of this is what I can do as a filmmaker, right? Now hire me for something you'll pay me for. And so that short film, like that's if that's the medium and that's where it lives, then there's nothing pushing you to do anything else with it. And so that's what we're really hoping for, is we're trying to change the way we think about short films, because if they can be reconsidered as a valuable tool to improve people's lives, then we can think differently about how we're making them and what we're saying in them and how those messages are being shared through short films. And that's what we're doing. We make our own films, but we're taking a little bit of a break from making our own films, because really the biggest value that we have right now is our platform that we make available to mental health professionals. And so we have 15 films on there. They're all our own originals, but I've been going to these festivals for like 3 years, and I'm seeing extraordinary pieces that touch on, from animated to comedy to drama to sci-fi, that touch on connection, that touch on suicidal ideation, that touch on bipolar disorder, that touch on MS, that touch on addiction, that touch on like just grief and suicide and death and depression and anxiety, right? Like, and PTSD and sexual assault and everything else. I'm just like, why am I killing myself to make all these films? It would be so much. We have a place where all of these great films that were made to help people can actually do exactly that. So we're looking right now. We're constantly looking for more and more great films that are as entertaining as they are impactful, to join us on our site so that they can go into a system that is not only letting them be seen as opposed to dying on the digital graveyard, but also making impact and changing lives.
Yeah, I think I think out of the last 3 years, I've lost count of how many short films I've seen.
I bet.
The two that stick out in my mind, that I call them, you're going to make sure you're going to have a Kleenex box next to you when you watch them, but it's a positive effect. And I think the first one that I absolutely loved and still remember to this day was The Stupid Boy by Phil Dunn.
Ooh.
And it's all I'm going to say is that it proves that the power of love can truly overcome anything. And
That's it.
that one, and that one should have been Oscar shortlisted that year. I'm still mad about that. There's another one that I fell in love last year by Rhys Chapman in the UK, Ryan Can't Read. And that's based on illiteracy.
Amazing.
And I mean, if you don't end that film with a smile on your face, you have no soul. and I've seen that film so many times that every single time it brings tears to my eyes. Awesome. Because it is just, you're like, oh, yes. All I'll say is that, hope emerges, and it's just incredible. And those are the type of films that leave an impact, and a positive impact. Sure, there's tense moments within those films, but they don't end that way.
Yeah. Right.
Or I should say, The Stupid Boy brings you into one of the most intense situations you will ever watch. But then at the end, you're like, oh my gosh.
That's amazing. That's filmmaking. That's storytelling.
That's how you tell a story.
Yeah.
And so, like with your films, how do people use your films? Let's say they have, maybe they do group therapy. Maybe there's high schools or colleges, perhaps, or like you said, health professionals. So how would they, how would they contact you? Just go to ofsubstance.org?
That's it. Go to ofsubstance.org. If you go to the top right corner and click sign up, and you create a free account, and you have immediate access to all of our films. Next to each film, we also put some general guidance, just like this film touches on shame, early relapse, early recovery, family dynamics, all sorts of themes to give a little bit of guidance. We're improving and developing those guides right now, and we are about to launch a brand new platform in about a month, where the back end looks like Netflix. We have hired a team. We've created something very bespoke, and it's great. And then what they're there for mental health professionals, is imagine starting your group or a one-on-one session or a couple session or a family session with one of our films, with maybe Trapped, and you just use it as a provocative tool to start a conversation. You start your session off with a mini movie that makes people feel immersed and entertained, but also creates that heightened state of emotional vulnerability. So now we have a shared context through which we can discuss. And that's it. It's that simple. You can use them. We don't put them in any curriculums at the moment, where we're not providing a curriculum. Instead, it's just a tool. You're the professional. You'll know what to do, and you'll find more creative ways to use them than we will. And we want to empower you. This is an empowerment tool to help you guys. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. This is one of the most powerful ways of using film and cinema to make a absolute true change and difference in people's lives. And ladies and gentlemen, turning movies into a primary tool for healing and growth of substance is an innovative nonprofit creating premium narrative short films, from comedies to heart-pounding thrillers, designed to explore mental health struggles in bite-sized brilliance. Now, then they will take their films and make them available. And like Alex, you said, they are available for therapists to use as tools in treatment, rehab, hospitals, prisons, schools, and beyond. This is the power of real filmmaking. Yes, we want films that entertain, but why not add an element of healing to it and truly make a difference? I mean, look, a lot of people caught up in addictions feel like they are in their own prison. And here's a simple key that could be a way out. And Alex Kaplan's many movies, again, aren't just entertainment, they're catalysts for transformation, boosting engagement, deepening absorption, and expediting outcomes of emotional growth and behavioral change. Again, visit ofsubstance.org to unleash the magic. Of Substance is an innovative nonprofit, again, creating premium narrative short films. You want to see these? They are absolutely incredible to watch. And Alex, I want to thank you so much for coming on today to share not only, as we talked about, Trapped and your new 60-second film that's going to be at Slam Dance, Safe. These films are so unique, but again, they have the tremendous power of cinema, and you're using them to help others.
Thank you so much, Ward. I appreciate the time. Thank you to everybody watching. I feel so grateful. I am going to add Safe to the website today.
Oh,
You can
fantastic.
see.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, head over to ofsubstance.org. Check out some of these short films. And for a lot of you filmmakers out there that watch Bond on Cinema, these are the types of films, well, you can learn from and maybe increase your vision a bit for your next film project. So as for me, ladies and gentlemen, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.